right, we are back with another episode of App Stories. Today's show is sponsored by Raycast, Notion, and Clean My Mac X. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
We had a good conversation in the pre-show for App Stories Plus subscribers and Club Mac Stories Premier members, all about some follow-up on the 11-inch iPad Pro, which I got about a week ago, and have been pretty happy with. And you had a question all about streaming video games and some strange Wi-Fi issues that Apple has
Yes.
not documented anywhere. And hopefully somebody who was listening to that can point you in the right direction to solving some of the issues you're seeing.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in joining the club, go to plus.club. Check out all the perks we have there. We have a bunch of different options for people, and App Stories Plus is part of the Club Premier plan. But you can also subscribe separately to App Stories Plus by going to appstories.plus. It's a great way to get an extended version of the show early that is ad-free. All right, Federico, let's talk about our wishes for both macOS and visionOS.
Okay, let's start with macOS. And I think obviously you're going to have more thoughts and requests than I do. I mean, I have been using macOS with my MacPad, but you've been a Mac user, like a primarily Mac user, far longer than I have. And I think these are things that you have mentioned before, like in previous episodes of our wish lists. And some of these are returning items. Some of them are new. So the stage is yours, John.
All right. Well, I want to start with notifications because notifications really hasn't changed at all in a long time. And, we recently, not that long ago, we got widgets, and widgets went from being, widgets on the desktop, I should say, because widgets went from being crammed in with the notifications by clicking on the clock to being available on your desktop. And when Apple did that migration, they left widgets in the notification center. And I just want them out of there because what I want is I would like my notifications to take up that entire column instead of being, at the top and needing to click on a button in order to expand them. Why not use the entire height of my screen to show me my notifications now that those widgets can be put on the desktop? It's a little bit like the Today view on the iPhone. It's like, well, Apple kept them there because they didn't have anything better to do with that swipe to the side screen, I guess. But on the Mac, I really feel like notifications deserve a little more space. And really, I don't think that the notification center on the Mac is really that good to begin with. I feel like there should be a different solution. I'm really not sure what it should be, but they really need to be redesigned and incorporated in a way that works better for people, because it's just, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. And I just don't find myself going to the notification center ever on my Mac. And that's not really great. I mean, I guess maybe I've come to rely on my iPhone and iPad for that kind of stuff, but there should be a solution for the Mac for people too.
Yeah. I obviously the current design is kind of silly, I think, and especially the way that they sliding, they just take a sidebar in on the right side of the display, and somehow there's still like an edit widgets button there. I don't know. It's kind of confusing, and I feel like we've had this notification center design for like a decade at this point, and I'm just wondering, hey, are we really sure there's no better way to, at the very least, not even deal with notifications, but like design and visualize notifications?
I think part of the problem is that what I'd really like is maybe something like the Today view on the iPhone, where you swipe to the right and you get a dedicated screen that's just for notifications. The problem with that, though, is that we have desktops, multiple desktops that are available, and you can't really do that because you need to be able to swipe between your desktops. And you can't really do like a swipe up with 3 fingers because that's something. Swipe down with 3 fingers is, shows you the windows for a particular app. There's not a lot of gestures left, I think, to give notifications something dedicated, but there needs to be some kind of solution, I think.
Yeah.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Raycast. Raycast is your Mac but better. Why is it better? It's because with just the tap of a hotkey, you have access to a powerful set of productivity tools within an extensible launcher. It's fast, ergonomic, and reliable. Raycast ships with the tools macOS should have built in, but doesn't. The app's clipboard history means you'll never forget anything important. Raycast also makes it simple to express yourself with fast emoji and GIF search tools, perform quick math calculations, currency and unit conversions, time differences, and a whole lot more. With a vibrant community of developers creating extensions for Raycast, there's a tool for almost anything you can imagine. You can do things like flight tracking, note-taking, saving tasks in your favorite task manager, searching for files and folders, running scripts, kicking off a shortcut, translating text, managing your windows, and a whole lot more. Stop switching contexts for all those little things that you do throughout the day. Reduce your distractions and speed up your interactions with your Mac using Raycast. You can download it for free or go pro to harness the power of AI, theme Raycast, and sync your setup across multiple Macs. Raycast is a natural way to use AI. All you have to do is type a query into Raycast and you'll get your answer. It's an always-on window into ChatGPT to help you with coding, writing email, automating repetitive tasks, and a bunch of other things. It's a fantastic deal that comes out to just $8 a month when you pay for an annual plan. Just go to ray.so/appstories to learn more, download the free version, and sign up for a pro account. Again, that's ray.so/appstories. Our thanks to Raycast for their support of the show.
All right, what you got next?
So I think semi-related to notifications are the alerts. And this is an old one. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but all the alerts you get when you try to install new software, between things wanting access to your desktop and your documents folder, to things wanting screen recording access or audio access, or the various privacy settings. There's just too much of that. And I've spent some time recently installing some new apps for things like doing this video recording that we're doing today of this episode, which we're not releasing. We're just kind of testing it out. But, I had to go through a lot of dialogues to approve having access to my camera and all those sorts of things. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to have privacy and security measures in these apps, but it really, the balance, I feel like, is a little bit off, because I just go clicking through those things with barely even reading them, because when a lot of times I'm in a rush and I don't feel like dealing with that. And so I just click, and I don't even pay attention to them anymore. And it just becomes like a speed bump along the way to getting things installed.
Yeah, I agree. There's got to be a better way to summarize or group together, or I don't know, a nicer way to display all of this, rather than just having to do what you just described, like the click, and just because you end up just ignoring.
Yeah, you do.
They mean. Yeah.
And I feel like, especially when it's like an app that says, I want permission to access your desktop, then I want permission to access your documents folder. Look, just tell me that it needs access to, give me a list. Here are all the folders that it wants, instead of giving me separate alerts for every one of those.
Yeah.
I've got 3 more system things for you, Federico.
Okay.
One is the Finder. The Finder has gotten buggy. It's not what it used to be. I have all kinds of problems.
It's better than Files, but
I agree, it is, but that's like faint praise. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Dropbox does not work very well, and that is because of the file provider stuff, I guess. It doesn't work like it used to. The Finder is just buggy. I have a problem right now where I just lose all my favorites in the sidebar all the time, my favorite folders. And I recreate that.
This still happens for you?
It still happens for me. And I tried reinstalling macOS on top, and it didn't happen. Didn't work. I am at the point now with a couple of different bugs. I also have some serious problems with shortcuts on the Mac, where I may rebuild the system from the ground up, from factory reset, basically, which is just a huge amount of work. But I feel like I have to do it before I start testing betas in the summer, so that I'm not complaining about things that are just because my system's messed up and not problems with the betas. So I don't know. We'll see. I got to set aside a weekend to do that at some point.
Yeah.
I also want to mention Stage Manager, which
this is a fun one.
Yeah, Stage Manager, it's like everybody got upset about Stage Manager, and rightly so, on the iPad because it was worse there. But it got fixes on iPad and never really changed on the Mac. And now we're in a position where I have more ways to create stages on my iPad than I do on my Mac. And it's just not great. I mean, you can do things like you can drag in and something from your dock.
And you cannot do that on the Mac.
You can't do that on the Mac. You can't do it from search. You can't do it. There's the only way you can do it is to shift click on something in the stage. It's the main way that I do it. And that's not great. There's still this thing when you have an app that has an open dialog like Numbers or Pages or something where things fly in and off the stage, on and off the stage, because those are technically like two different apps or two different windows. And once the open dialog disappears, your last app comes back, but then Pages loads whatever document that you clicked on. And so then it swaps again, and it's just on and off, on and off. And I have come very close to abandoning Stage Manager. I still kind of like it though, because I like the tidiness of it, but it is too hard to organize the stages. I'd really like to have, just like on the iPad, we've talked about, dedicated stages that I can save and access easily and get back to without having to recreate all the time, and just more ways to create those stages as well.
So it still doesn't work with Spotlight on the Mac?
No.
Oh gosh. So if you search for something, it's not like on the iPad where you search for something, you hold Shift, and you can add the selected app result to your workspace.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't work like that.
Oh, that's not good. So they basically left it untouched.
It hasn't changed. No, it hasn't changed at all since it was introduced.
Yeah. Now, which is too bad, given that you would think that on the Mac you would have even more freedom in terms of arranging windows and doing things, different
you would think. But it's like a lot of these multitasking things over the year. It gets introduced and then it doesn't get touched again.
I've heard that before.
It's a little bit like that.
Okay. So what else you got for the system?
All right. The last one I want to mention is just system preferences, which...
system settings, you mean?
Yeah, right. I can't believe I said system preferences.
Yes.
Yeah, no, system
settings. Important distinction.
John. It is. It's very important. We changed the name and we made it, and it got all confused. And there are just a lot of things that I go to the wrong place for still. I just feel like I don't hate it as much as a lot of people do. On the other hand, for instance, whenever I want to go to switch from light mode to dark mode, I always think I should go to displays, because that seems like a logical place to go. You're changing the brightness or the theme of your display, but that's not where it is. And it's in general, I think. No, it's not even in general. It's under appearance. I can never remember where it is, and that's no good. I think some of these things should be rethought in terms of where things are, because there's just so much in here, and it's all over the place.
Yeah. There's a rumor that Apple is going to reorganize system settings in the next version of macOS. So I don't know. I think I don't have strong feelings about this as much as I may have strong feelings about like Stage Manager, for example, or Finder stability. Like I think system settings is fine, but like not in an exciting way. Like it's like, it's kind of like the iOS app, but I don't know. Some folks really, really dislike it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And look, having search really helps a lot. There's no doubt about it. I don't mind having to use search, but sometimes it just feels counterintuitive to me. I just feel like even if it is okay and not the biggest deal in the world, it ought to be rethought a little bit, because it doesn't feel as well organized as it could be to me.
Yeah. Before we talk about apps, is there anything else you want to mention about the system? Like, is there anything that you think about your Mac and you're like, oh, I wish my Mac could do this, and it's not here. Like, we do have our list of app related enhancements, but like big picture, yeah, okay,
I mean, big picture, I guess, we can skip to AI a little bit. I mean, I think that there's a
right,
lot of
right,
opportunities to bring AI into the Mac at some point. I mean, we've talked a little bit about things like, that recall feature and being able to have your Mac or your iPad or whatever it is, watch what you're doing and make it easy to get back to things. I think that's a really neat feature. There are potential privacy issues with that. And, if someone got hold of your Mac, it might make it easier for them to kind of find things. I think that would be kind of a cool feature. I think that having tools to do like grammar checking built in, we've got pretty good spell checking on the Mac, but some built-in grammar checking would be nice, as well as maybe more fuzzy logic for finding things, finding
mm,
files, finding data, no matter whether it's in a file or in some sort of other context that you can get back out again. And I think there is a place for some of the like text summarization stuff that's done a little bit like what Notion AI does, where Notion, which is one of our sponsors of this episode, where Notion will summarize meeting notes or pull out tasks and that kind of thing. I think that could be useful, especially if it were tied to the system apps where you could have those tasks just dumped into reminders, for instance, or a third-party app like Things could do the same thing and have it put into its app as well. That would be kind of nice.
Do you think they're gonna do AI on the Mac this year? Can you see a scenario in which the AI stuff is iPhone only and not on the Mac? Maybe even
Yeah.
not on the iPad.
Yeah, no, I can. I mean, I think it should be on both the iPad and the Mac, and I would like it to be on all three at once. But just kind of given the way Apple tends to roll out new features like this, I can see it debuting on the iPhone and taking an extra year or maybe even two to roll out on other systems.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think they should do it. I think they should do it
I
everywhere.
agree.
If anything, because I think it's so weird that and we're seeing this on iOS as well, like all these third-party apps, each implementing like a different flavor of AI features. Like everything is very fragmented at the moment. There's different versions of Chat GPT integration, different versions of different large language models. I think there's a real opportunity for Apple here to just come in and say, here's an API that allows you to do AI with really high performance in your apps, and you just need to, you can just integrate with this system feature. You don't need to depend on third-party libraries anymore. You can just, it becomes a native framework of all Apple
Right.
platforms. And that should, like, if you think about it, if the AI is always the same in all of the apps that you use, it also means that the AI knows about all the apps that you use because it lives inside a bunch of different apps. Right now, let's say that you have ChatGPT integration in, I don't know, a Mastodon client, and then you have the same ChatGPT integration, I don't know, in a task manager. The two ChatGPTs have no idea that you're the same person and you're doing the same thing. Like, they don't talk to each
Right.
other. Whereas I think the benefit for Apple, like the advantage for Apple here would be the AI that we are doing knows you, the user, and is embedded in a bunch of different apps, but it's still the same intelligence, which means, I may ask Siri, hey, what's the thing I saw in Carrot Weather about the forecast in 2 weeks? And then I could follow up by saying, and what about that email with the location that they mentioned at the beach? Like, that's the idea. Like, it's a single intelligence that is embedded within a bunch of apps, and knows you and can follow you along as you use multiple apps. At least, I don't know. That's my dream, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I feel like the kind of thing that I would really use AI for would be something like, find me that song that I mentioned to Federico. And it may be that maybe I sent you an iMessage about it. Maybe it was, I don't know, a link that I dropped into Discord, whatever it happens to be, but it would be tied to you. And the AI would be able to tell it's a song because it was like an Apple Music link or a Spotify link or something. And I wouldn't have to remember when I did it, where I did it, all I would need is just like the barest amount of information. It was music, and it was something that I sent to Federico. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Notion. I've been using Notion for a few years now, and I love using it for things like meeting notes. It's something that we use for big projects that we've got going on. It allows us to share all that stuff in one place, allow multiple people to take notes, and then we can use something like Notion AI to summarize those notes and get them organized, pull out the tasks, all that kind of stuff, which I really like. It's a place where your team can write, plan, and organize and rediscover the joy of play. It's a workspace designed not just for making progress, but also getting inspired. It's an AI powered workspace where things just take care of themselves. Meetings have summaries, documents find themselves, and every question gets answered. Notion AI turns knowledge into action, from summarizing meeting notes and automatically generating action items to getting answers to questions in seconds. If you can think of it, you can make it. And it's for everyone, whether you're a Fortune 500 company or freelance designer, starting a new startup, or a student juggling classes and clubs. It works for everyone. Try Notion for free today when you go to notion.com/appstories. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/appstories, and start turning ideas into action. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. That's notion.com/appstories. Our thanks to Notion for their support of the show.
All right, shall we talk about some apps?
Yeah, we should. I mean, I think I've mentioned this in years past, but music really needs a tune-up.
Yes, this is a favorite of yours.
Yeah, well, the problem is that it's gotten to the point where music is buggy enough that if I have my iPad or my phone nearby, I often will just AirPlay to the speakers in my office, because it's for one thing, I can't take the music with me. I can't hand off music playing on my Mac onto my phone and take it with me out when I walk out the door. Plus, the app tends to drop AirPlay connections for me occasionally, or if I'm doing something on my Mac, it'll stutter the music once in a while. There's all kinds of like performance issues like that are a real problem. And I don't know, it doesn't refresh, for instance. You would think that it's, music is essentially a web page inside of an app more than anything else. The only way to refresh it is to switch from one view to another and back again. And if nothing else, I'd like to just have a Command R and refresh it like I do on Safari, but you can't really do that. So I'd like to see music just get better. I mean, sure, it could use a redesign too, but a lot of my wishes this year are just make things nicer, make them work better than they do right now.
Yeah. The next item in the list
is TestFlight.
TestFlight.
Yeah. So I have a long history with TestFlight, and I have had people online scold me for having too many betas. And, the reality is it's my job to try apps. And I'm not always testing every one of those betas, but if I drop off of a beta, I would then have to spend the time to contact a developer and get back on it if I wanted to. I actually use TestFlight as a way to keep track of what's changing in apps. Even if I'm not testing that particular app at any given time, I can look at the notes and I can see, oh, so-and-so is doing something really interesting. I should jump on this and start using it, as opposed to it just being like, bug fixes and feature enhancements. So it's very important to what I do. And earlier this year, well, a little over a year, I wrote about how it was performing really poorly on the Mac. And eventually, when the Vision Pro came out, it stopped working entirely for me. And it turns out it's what I suspected. It was the quantity of betas I had was overwhelming whatever backend system Apple has. And I was able to get it fixed through dealing with feedback. Fixed in the sense that the app now opens. I can actually install betas, but it's not good. It still takes a long time to load. still freezes frequently and has to be force quit. It's just not designed for this. And I understand that I'm like an outlier when it comes to this, but it's also an important tool, not just to me, but to developers. And it has barely been touched in at least in terms of, as far as I can tell, in terms of performance over the years. And I'd really like to see it improve.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, we've been over this before. There's multiple articles about TestFlight on Mac stories, and it just needs to be
I just keep pushing on this one because to me, it's like I literally got myself into a position right before Sofa was released where I was unable to install the beta on my Mac, and I was days away from publishing a review that basically said Sofa on iOS and the iPad is really great, but I'm not so sure about the Mac because I wasn't able to install it. Fortunately, I got this all cleared up before I had to publish that review. But, it's no good that doesn't work like at all.
Yeah. I'm going to mention shortcuts. This is another one that we mention every year at this point. It's no secret, I think, that we think that shortcuts needs a lot of performance improvements and bug fixes and more system integrations. This is sort of what we've been saying for the past 3 years, really, and it kind of feels, not kind of, it's the truth. That shortcuts for Mac has been also left untouched since it came out 5 years ago. It's maybe 4.
4, I think. Yeah.
4. Yeah, they released it. And they said it's the future of automation. And I still think it can be. But boy, does the update pace of shortcuts not match the original intention. Like they said, we believe it's the future of automation on Apple platforms. And then as far as the Mac is concerned, but you may as well just say the same about iOS and iPadOS. What have they done in terms of actually building that future besides adding, every year they add a couple of actions for settings for some new apps, but the thing is the performance has gotten much worse. The bugs have gotten a lot more frequent and worse than ever, especially because of the Swift UI implementation of the shortcuts interface. It just feels like shortcuts feels like the app version of the iPad in a way. Like shortcuts is the app version of iPadOS. Like it's there. It can be the future, but it's been sort of just left hanging in there, doing its thing with some really minor improvements over the years. And I don't know. I would love to see a sign of life. Maybe, and we keep saying this every year. There's maybe a WWDC, and in this case, I'll do the new version of this statement. Maybe AI will fix it. I don't know. We need to see something, and if anything, better performance, more reliability, personal automations on the Mac. What are they?
Yeah.
Like we still don't have automations on the Mac. Like anything, Apple, anything works.
Yeah, no, personal automation on the Mac, it seems like one of the best places for it because a lot of people will have if you have a desktop Mac, you maybe have a Mac that's running 24/7. It's perfect for that kind of thing, even if just running shortcuts on a schedule. And I know there are ways to do that with third-party apps, but it ought to be built into the system as well. And you're right, there have been some new actions. They have been few and far between. I think they've even been fewer than on iPhone and the iPad. And the performance right now, I think I have something very particular going on with my desktop Mac that is causing it to be worse than even normal. But I rely more on the iPhone and iPad version of shortcuts than on the Mac these days, just because it's just so frustrating on the Mac. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Clean My Mac X. Cleaning up space on your devices can make such a difference in performance. I've been using Clean My Mac X since the very start, when the app was first launched, and it's evolved into an incredibly versatile tool. Not only can it help you get rid of the junk on your system that's just taking up drive space for no particular reason, it can tune up your system too, doing things like freeing up RAM, getting rid of unwanted login items, scanning for viruses and malware, and a whole bunch more. But where it started is with cleaning junk off your Mac. And I just recently, like a week ago, ran it again and cleared out over 30 gigabytes of junk that I didn't need. It was amazing to see. Junk files, hung processes, and malicious apps can slow down even the latest, most powerful Macs. And maintaining your Apple machine, whether it's old or new, is essential for smooth macOS performance. Clean My Mac X is an all-in-one Mac maintenance tool that makes taking care of old junk, faulty apps, and malware a breeze. It's an efficient, aesthetically pleasing, and hassle-free way to do all of that. And using the menu bar app, you can monitor your Mac's health, CPU load, and a whole bunch more. Clean My Mac X is notarized by Apple and available on the App Store. And it's aligned with new changes coming to iOS users. Clean My Mac X has been featured in Forbes, 9to5Mac, TechCrunch, VentureBeat, and other publications. With nearly 30 million downloads and 15 years of expertise, this app is a must-try for any Mac user. As Apple continues to pack Macs with innovative features, Clean My Mac X ensures that your hardware remains healthy and running in peak performance, so you can enjoy a seamless macOS experience. All App Stories listeners can get 15% off, plus a 7-day free trial. Check out the link in the show notes now and go to macpaw.app/appstories. Again, that's macpaw.app/appstories, or click the link in the show notes. Our thanks to Clean My Mac X for their support of the show. Why don't we turn our attention, Federico, to visionOS?
Let's do it. Okay. So I think we are both in agreement about one thing, which is there needs to be some actual features made possible by the developer strap.
Yes.
So, okay. So before we get into this, let's just assume that we're going to see visionOS 2.0 at WWDC. And I think it goes without saying that we both think that visionOS, it's a good start, but it needs a lot of work. Like, it needs to cover a lot of basics that have been left sort of non-existent, really, in visionOS 1.0. So, that being said, the developer strap. I think that accessory exists and it's being used right now to basically have a more reliable way to take screenshots over USB. Somebody did some digging months ago into the developer strap, and it seems like it actually does support Thunderbolt in terms of like the actual chip inside. Mm-hmm. My hope is that the developer strap with the software update will unlock more features, things like maybe screen mirroring from the Vision Pro to a Mac instead of having to use AirPlay, or Thunderbolt support. So the ability to plug in external drives. Hey, who doesn't want to plug an external drive into their head? You know, it's
or an Ethernet cable. That's what I want.
Or Ethernet. Like, given the wireless issues that we mentioned in the pre-show for App Stories Plus subscribers, there needs to be support for a wired internet connection on the Vision Pro. So more, I guess, I mentioned the developer strap, but that is just a way to say more I/O features in visionOS 2.0 instead of having to rely on Wi-Fi and AirPlay.
Yeah, and it's, to me, part of the shame is that Apple wasn't able to do like Wi-Fi 6E, and I understand that that's probably a power consumption and chip size issue and that kind of thing. But given that that's the only I/O that we've got, it is a big bottleneck for the Vision Pro.
Yeah. I could mention multitasking, or there is no multitasking UI in visionOS at the moment. If anything, because like the multitasking right now is you can open as many windows as you want and you can live around the house, which is great compared to iPadOS. Mm-hmm. But there needs to be a way anyway to manage those windows. It could be some kind of stage manager to, I can't believe I'm saying this, but stage manager may actually make sense in the context of visionOS. Like imagine grouping related windows together and having, imagine like the equivalent of the stage manager strip on the left, which is like a collection of thumbnails for groups of windows. Imagine that. Imagine if like you could, I don't know, minimize groups of windows into a stack, like a 3D stack that you can move around your workspace. And then when you look at it and you pinch the stack, those windows like they pop open. And like that could be a way to manage groups of windows and keep them together. I could see otherwise some kind of expose or mission control, like a way to sort of explode your view and have an overview with previews of all the open windows that you have, instead of just having to physically move around the house and look at these giant windows. Maybe there could be like, I don't know, could be a grid, could be a 3D stack, could be anything really. And even just a way to see all the windows from a specific app. So if I have 3 Safari windows and I don't remember where I left the one with the recipe, probably in the kitchen, but what if I cannot find it in the kitchen? There should be a way to say, okay, Vision Pro, let me see all of my Safari windows and let me bring them back if needed. And yeah, I mean, I feel like these are just the basics, right? So like grouping windows, managing windows, there needs to be something. And I think at this point, make it stage manager, I guess.
It is too hard to lose windows. That's absolutely true. I mean, and it's not even just because they're in other rooms of your house. It's even when they're in front of you, they get kind of hidden behind each other, and it's hard to figure out where things are. Yeah. I think a little bit related to this, Federico, is, and going back to I/O for a minute, is I think one way that AI could help with the Vision Pro is making it easier to navigate the UI without having to use a keyboard, because right now the Siri integration is very limited. I was fiddling around with this. You've got the digital crown to bring back your apps, bring back your home screen. You've got Siri, which can do things like open a particular app, but I want to be able to navigate this UI a little bit better and in more detail using my voice and limiting the amount of keyboard interaction that I need.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a long list. iPad virtualization, let me do iPad virtual display instead of just Mac virtual display. More environments. We still have the environments coming soon. Like, how soon is soon?
Since February, they've been coming soon.
On an infinite time scale, somebody would say on another podcast, February 2024 soon may be February 2025 if we consider,
sure.
The year 2064 will come eventually. And so if you consider that, then maybe next year is soon. But yeah, more environments. And just like I would love to see, and this is why they're probably never going to do it, third-party watch faces on the Apple Watch. I would love to see third-party environments with an environment API. If anything, because we've seen so many apps on visionOS App Store with custom quote-unquote environments that they look like environments, but they actually don't behave like environments because they cannot. The whole point of an environment, like an official one, is that you transport yourself in a different environment and then you can keep working. You can bring in other windows. Whereas with this third-party environments right now on the App Store, all you can do is use the environment because that's the app. You cannot bring in other windows. And there needs to be an API.
Yeah, I mean, an environment's more like a desktop than anything else. And
exactly.
When you have
it's
it
like
in
a wallpaper.
Right. When you're in the Disney app, it has some very nice environments, but they're just backdrops to watching Disney Plus. That's all they are.
Yeah. And now that the Apple Pencil Pro has a gyroscope, I would love to see Apple Pencil support in visionOS to draw with in AR, point at stuff, like use it as another input system. Squeeze to do something. I don't know. This is something that I mentioned before. There has to be a better, easier, more guided onboarding and demo experience. It's too hard to demo the Vision Pro to someone else. There has to be there has to be like a way that is like a guided, because also like I forget about the things that I gotta explain. Like I'm not Apple PR. Like it's not my job to explain what the Vision Pro does. And I don't remember all the settings that you can enable, all the things you can try. There should be like an immersive experience that is like a meta experience of sorts. Just like it's an immersive Vision Pro experience about demoing the Vision Pro to someone else. Like there needs to be something there. What else? Obviously more native apps, like all those apps.
I went through the folder, and it's like a lot of things that you would have expected that I think Apple to do, they haven't done. I mean, Home's not in there as a native app, Maps, Shortcuts, Calendar.
Calendar.
Right?
Yeah.
Pages and Numbers. Right. I mean, it's weird. Isn't it weird that Keynote is native, but Pages and Numbers aren't? I mean, what's up with that? And the clock. I mean, there's tons of clock apps, which is great, but clock seems like a natural thing to hang on your wall when you're working.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, all those apps in that folder. I think I would love to see more native stuff in visionOS 2.0. And maybe not all of them, but maybe just show us that you're thinking about actually porting all of your apps to a native visionOS experience.
The other thing I think that visionOS needs is just continual tune-ups, because you can tell when you're starting to approach the limits of what visionOS can do. And I don't know, this is a hardware issue too, but hopefully there's some software things that Apple can do to avoid some of the problems that you had with streaming video games that we talked about in the pre-show, or just making screenshots easier than they are now. I overheat my Vision Pro taking screenshots all the time. And I know that that's also another one of those very particular me issues. On the other hand, I can tell that it's very easy to start overwhelming that device once you flatten out the screens in it, and you're no longer using the foveated rendering.
Yeah, that's very common problem. I would love to see changes on the home screen. Like, let me rearrange apps. Let me create folders. Like, give me freedom to do on my home screen what I've been able to do on my iPhone forever, essentially. That seems like pretty much a given at this point.
Move your apps around. I mean, it's crazy to me that everything's alphabetical.
Everything's alphabetical. There's no way to do anything. It's just an alphabetical grid. And with some apps that have been bumped to the first page, and that's it. I would love to see, obviously, a fix for the Wi-Fi issues that we mentioned in the pre-show. You can do some Googling if you ran into this, the AWDL, the Apple Wireless Direct Link, that's been causing a lot of people problems in terms of like stuttering and like network glitches when streaming, like especially video games for like a PlayStation or a gaming PC. It's a very common problem of the Vision Pro and how it deals with the AWDL wireless framework. So more flexibility there would be welcome. Support for third-party mice, which it's the Vision Pro just works with the Apple Magic Trackpad now. It doesn't work with anything else, I believe, at the moment, which is kind of odd.
Do you think that's because Apple doesn't view it as a device you use sitting at a table or a desk?
Well, that's their opinion. Didn't they show in the original announcement?
No, they do, though. They show people like standing at a standing desk, I remember.
Yeah, so I would love to see support for multiple desktops in Mac Virtual Display. That's something that you can sort of fake with third-party utilities now, but they're not as high performance and reliable or fast or good-looking as the native Mac Virtual Display. And especially if you have a powerful Mac, like maybe, I would expect that maybe my MacBook Air wouldn't be able to handle multiple desktops with the Vision Pro for reasons. But what if you have a Mac Studio? What if you have a MacBook Pro? Like, you should be able to have 2 desktops, 3 desktops in Mac Virtual Display. That feels like something that should be possible.
Yeah, even if you have to down-res them a little bit or something like that. If it has to be 1080 or something.
Yeah. And lastly, my final thing would be an expansion of the control center. So the thing that you see when you look up and you click, it's got the basic stuff for like notifications, the time, the battery, and all those basic controls. I would love to see that transform into a kind of like menu bar. We've seen a lot of third-party status bars over the past few months. We've covered them on Mac Stories and on the Club. I think there's a real opportunity for Apple there to Sherlock some of these apps in terms of like expanding Control Center to show me more stuff, like show me maybe some kind of widgets, could be there, or I don't know, a proper now playing preview for what's playing in the music app. Like show me more data, more information in Control Center. Maybe let me pin that Control Center so that I don't have to look up and expand it manually every single time. Maybe there could be a way to pin it and make it stay expanded instead of collapsing it every single time. Yeah, an expansion of the Control Center with more flexibility and more data. I think that's the final thing I'll mention that I will want to see in visionOS 2.0, assuming there is going to be a visionOS 2.0, and I think obviously there will.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I really like it. I think it would be an interesting, there could be more flexibility with notifications too, in that kind of a scenario where maybe you are expecting a very important email or something and you want your notifications pinned in your environment. So instead of waiting for the drop down that you might not notice or see, you actually just have it right there in front of you and it pops up in front of your face. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done there. All right, Federico. Well, that's it for today's wish lists. We will have one more wish list episode before we head off to WWDC. I want to thank our 3 sponsors again. That was Raycast, Notion, and Clean My Mac X. You can find the 2 of us over at macstories.net. Federico and I are also on Mastodon. Just go to viticci.macstories.net and johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow us there. And we're on Threads and Instagram. Federico is at Viticci, that's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.